gotten lost? I mean, not just the I'm not really sure where I'm going, I better check my GPS so I can get back on track kind of lost. I mean, really lost. So much so that it has become clear that you will never be able to get back to where you need to be without some assistance. Without, in fact, someone actually coming out to find you and returning you to safety. And whether you have or haven't ever been in this unenviable and potentially terrifying situation, let me add one additional layer of complexity to that question. What if you were lost in exactly that way, but didn't even realize it? What if you thought everything was humming along nicely, just the way you expected it to be, and then something happens, and suddenly you realize that everything you've known and depended on for your success and happiness, your location in life, if you will, was but a mirage, and you were totally in the dark, and desperately needing something or someone to come after you and turn on the lights so you could get back on course. Our New Testament reading this morning from Paul's first letter to Timothy lays out some of the groundwork for this concept of being lost and then found. You remember Paul, the apostle formerly known as Saul, the renowned Orthodox Jew who spent much of his early career persecuting Jesus, criticizing pretty much everything Jesus was trying to bring into this world, and who later went on to be one of Jesus' most effective apostles. He was pretty much the poster child, you might say, of someone who had been lost and then was found by Jesus. Someone who literally saw the light as the scales that blinded him to Christ's mission and love suddenly fell away. And the thing about Paul, you see, is that right up until the time that Jesus found him and brought him into the light, he thought he was doing just fine. He was a revered Jewish scholar, a relatively wealthy Roman citizen by birth, and thereby generally able to move around the empire as he pleased, quite confident and comfortable in his devout Jewish faith. Everything was going along quite nicely for old Saul, until that fateful day when Jesus found Saul on the road to Damascus, blinded him with a flash of light from heaven, and asked him why he was so dedicated to persecuting Jesus. 3 days later, Paul regained his vision and began his career as perhaps the most famous of Jesus' apostles. Now, our epistle this morning is not the story of Paul's conversion, but in his letter to Timothy, Paul is very clear that his come to Jesus moment, when he received God's mercy and grace for the very first time, it was very unexpected because he didn't even know that he was lost to begin with. But when the scales were lifted from his eyes, Paul recognized that if he, among the most flagrant of the sinners, the worst of the worst, if he could be sought out and found by Christ, then there was hope for the whole world. And Paul's experience is an example to all of us who seek to come to know Jesus better and have the scales removed from our own eyes. If Jesus could and did go after Saul, you see, you can be certain that he's coming after each one of us. Because that's what God's grace is. That's what God's reckless and relentless love looks like for each one of us. Okay, you might be saying, maybe I am a little bit lost in the big picture sense of the word, but on a day-to-day basis, does it really matter? I'm surrounded by people, places, and things that love and support me and provide me with all the tools I need to travel through the challenges of this life. And so, we might rationalize to ourselves, if we can just play out our time here on earth living that way, does it really matter if I'm found at all? I can understand the thought process behind that view. I certainly know that a growing number of people in this world are taking that same approach as the pews in the churches become more and more empty each year. But here's the thing. Even if we do take that approach, if we allow ourselves to believe just for 1 second that there is a God who created us, who loves us, and who wants to be in a relationship with us, then even if we're not convinced yet that all our very survival depends on all of those facts, doesn't it make sense to honor that gift of unconditional love by opening our hearts to him, receiving his grace, and returning to him when he seeks and finds us again? Said another way, is it worth the risk not doing that? When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was with my family in Arkansas at a United States Air Force Festival. You can imagine this wide open fairground bursting with activity. Hundreds of people, bands playing, events going on all around. Well, somehow I became separated from my family. Not quite sure how it happened, but it did. Now, my parents are listening here this morning, and I'm undoubtedly going to butcher some of these facts. But and rest assured, I will be corrected this afternoon when I speak. But I think I recall what happened close enough to continue. The point I'm trying to make is that even though I was most certainly lost, I didn't know it, because I was instantly scooped up by an Air Force officer and provided with plenty of snacks and distractions while they announced my whereabouts to the crowd. I was perfectly happy being lost, you see, because on that day I had enough other things going on around me to allow me the luxury of not caring. At least not at that precise moment. And even though I don't remember all the details of that day, how long I was separated from my family, or the faces of those who cared for me while I was, I do have etched in my mind some 60 years later, the look on my father's face as he leapt onto the stage where the officer had taken me and scooped me back into his arms. Dad's look was somewhere between the complete terror of having lost me in the first place and utter relief and joy that he had found me again, and I was back where I belonged. And so I think it is with God when we wander away from him. He's always right there searching for us, waiting, dare I say, hoping that we will see him again, reach out to him, and receive his loving grace to heal us and bring us back into the security of his comforting arms. So when we are feeling lost, even if we don't know that we are, and we open our eyes to see his light, just like I saw my father jumping onto that stage that day so many years ago, we will know that everything will be all right. And God will rejoice, knowing that we have returned to him. But our heart and eyes have to be open, you see, in order to feel that reunion take place. Which brings us today to today's gospel. In these few short verses from Luke, we hear two parables about being lost, searched for, and then found. One involving sheep and the other involving coins. Both were decidedly unaware that they were lost. And yet their owner, the one responsible for them, was frantically searching until they were successfully recovered. Again, I think we can find great comfort in knowing that God will seek us out, whether we know we're lost or not, and bring us back to him. Because all he really wants is to be in relationship with us, and have us know once and for all that we are forever his. That's what God's reckless love looks like. That's what his grace looks like. And it's just waiting there for us to receive it. Because God, you see, is unchangeable, always faithful, always perfect in his love for us. And that means no matter how dark things may seem, no matter how lost we may be, we will never be alone if we just let him reclaim us. I think the news this past week reminded us of the reality that the whole world seems quite lost at the moment. It's hard to avoid the headlines, wasn't it? Remembering the tragedy of 9/11, the spreading of hostilities in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, another heartbreaking school shooting, this time, but not the first time, in Colorado, and the shooting death of Charlie Kirk. All of these tragic events highlight the fact that there is something going on in this world that just doesn't make any sense. And it's not just one particular socioeconomic, cultural, or political sector responsible for those tragedies. We seem to be a bit rudderless. And that, at least for me, is very unsettling and disorienting. And it makes me feel lost more often than I like to admit. And if you're like me, even if most of the time we can insulate ourselves from the mayhem going on all around us by hunkering down in whatever bubble brings us the most comfort, deep down we know that we need something to hold on to that will bring light onto an ever-darkening horizon. Bring hope to a world that seems sometimes to have forgotten what that word means at all. And friends, I'm inviting you to join me in my belief that especially in these times, God is waiting for us. He is out seeking us to provide the comfort and hope that only He can. Now, this is not to say that sometimes we may have our doubts that God is, in fact, waiting for us at all. Where is God in those tragedies I just mentioned? Or the countless other events in our lives and the lives of those around us that bring misery, suffering, and fear? Where is God in any of that? Well, you've heard me give an answer to this before. God never promises that bad things won't happen, even to the best of the good people. We all know that those things do happen. To all of us. The promise of the new covenant isn't that God will keep those things from happening, but rather that He will be by our side as we move through it. Through the darkness and fear that surrounds us when we feel so very much alone. When we are all lost for whatever reason. And that, my friends, is where the hope of our faith resides. In the belief that God is with us always. And we need Him most of all, and all we need to do is turn to His light and be comfortable. You've all heard the expression, there are no atheists in foxholes, right? Well, I'm not sure that's true, but I do know that many of us at times just don't feel lost at all. And with that perhaps comes a little neglect of our faith. Not relying upon it as much as we should anyway. Not giving the Lord credit for all the blessings in our lives when things are going great, because, well, things are going great. We might even take some credit for that ourselves. But the moment things take a turn and we suddenly realize that we can't rely on our own abilities and the human infrastructure that we have created around us, it occurs to us that we need to rely on something greater to make it through. See, it's okay to be part of the 99, or the coins that remained in the pouch, as long as we remember that when we become one of the lost sheep who wander away, or the coin that rolls out of sight, God is coming after us in reckless, relentless pursuit, and will not stop searching until He finds us. And when He does, just like the shepherd and the woman in the parables, He will rejoice. He will be utterly overjoyed that we have found Him and returned to a relationship with Him that is filled with love, forgiveness, and grace. God will come for us, you see, so we need to be ready and willing to receive His grace and be found. I leave you this morning with some lyrics from a song by an artist named Corey Asbury called Reckless Love. I believe they capture the essence of what we've been talking about this morning. The words are these. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless